Loud. All right. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining and welcome to our webinar, Automate Your Nonprofit's Budgeting Process. We're really excited for the content and experts we have on today. I'm going to kick off today's presenters, Brenda, Brianna, and Gabriel. I'm going to give them each a couple minutes to introduce themselves, and then we'll get started. Brenda?
Hi, my name is Brenda Kaler. I'm the Director of Nonprofit Client Engagement for Armanino. So in my role, I talk to a lot of clients about trends that we're seeing in the market. So that's my role today. Happy to be here.
And my name is Brianna Johnston. I lead our fp&A solutions team here at Armanino. So I'll be talking today a little bit about options when it comes to fp&A solutions, and really excited to share some more information with everybody.
Yeah, and I'm Gabby. I'm a senior consultant with the strategic finance outsourcing team here within Armanino. I work with nonprofit clients on forecasting, budgeting, financial analysis, and board support.
Great. Thank you guys for being on today. And Brenda, if you want to go ahead and kick it off for us.
Absolutely. We told you about us, tell you a little bit about Armanino in case you are not familiar. We are the 19th largest CPA and consulting firm in the country. You can see all of the dots where we've got employees, offices, and clients. We do have clients, I believe, in all 50 states as well as Canada. So really excited to be able to bring all of the insights from our clients to you today on this webinar. Our agenda today, we're going to go through a few success stories, some trends and challenges that we're seeing in the current market, tools for services for agile planning, and strategic finance outsourcing, and what a roadmap might look like if you are looking to upgrade your budgeting and forecasting options. So we'll jump right into our trends and challenges. So one of the main things we're seeing today, of course, is crisis management. That's the big elephant in the room. What if scenarios are very common? What if we reduce staff, if we reduce costs, if we expand? Some aspects of nonprofit have a very increased need for demand in their services, and so they're growing. Thinking about PPP forgiveness, what that estimation looks like. If you're looking at mergers and acquisitions, PPP loans have to be fully settled in order to do mergers. So we're seeing a lot of questions still about PPP and other CARES Act programs as well, like the Employee Retention Credit and the Shuttered Venues Operating Grant, and how those need to be classified and help with the revenue diversification impact. So a lot of people during the pandemic started new programs. They started looking at things that they maybe previously hadn't, and doing things that may have resulted in unrelated business income, and therefore unrelated business income tax. Looking at reopening, again, scenario planning. What happens if we ask people to come in 5 days a week, or 3 days a week, or 2 days a week, or not at all, and give up our office space? So a lot of questions around, the pandemic, the ongoing fallout from that, the return to work planning, etc. In the areas of cost management, always a concern for nonprofits. So thinking about cash flow forecasting. A lot of grantors, at least private ones, have sped up their time to pay. Government, still the government. And so cash flow forecasting can be really critical when you've got increased operations in certain areas to be able to do that. Of course, the supply chain issues and inflation, global inflation, are affecting nonprofits just like every other company. So sometimes it's taking longer to get the necessary program supplies to the people that need them. And inflation is just making everything cost more. And of course, the interest rates and your investments are not keeping pace with that. And so thinking about, again, going back to that cash management, how do you do that? A lot of people during the pandemic, we found automated their procure to pay process. Got in some AP bill payment software to enable people to more easily send in invoices and to enable you to be able to more easily pay them rather than cutting a paper check, finding 2 people to sign it, and getting that mailed out, involving 5 or more people in that process and delaying the time for payment. And then on the internal side, of course, automating expense reporting and reimbursement for the same reasons. Oftentimes with the same tool, AP and expense is often budgeted or bundled together, not budgeted together. And then on the other side, technology. We're seeing an increase in people being interested in automating tasks. You may hear it referred to as artificial intelligence, machine learning, trying to look at data sets and find relationships that not only are more difficult for you to find manually, but you may not even be aware to be able to look for them. And so there's really nice insights that you can find there, especially on the revenue and cost cutting side. We're seeing increases in data breaches and phishing attacks. Everybody heard about the Blackbaud breach that happened about a year ago. Almost all nonprofits were infected in some way by that. And so thinking about data privacy, you've got access to a lot of sensitive donor information, a lot of PII. And so thinking about where are the weaknesses in your infrastructure, especially if you still have people working remotely, are they using their own technology? How are they getting into your systems? Do you have those protections, those firewalls, those VPNs to make that a safe environment for them at home? And then lastly, of course, the return on impact. So really thinking about how the donors of today are viewing their donation. I saw a statistic the other day that said 60% of all donors at this point are now millennial or younger. And so those types of donors view donations as investments. They want to know how you're using it. They want to know, are you a good organization in terms of your carbon footprint? Are you trying to get to net zero? Are you looking at the impact of how you're working on your local communities and things like that? And so it's really kind of changed the conversation to give us this money, do the programs, to I want to understand why you're doing the programs that you're doing, the impact that you're having, and how we could do more. So it's a really interesting conversation today to really see that shift, that people are asking more than just writing a check, that they really want to see how that money is being utilized and stewarded. Next. So here's a sample of some of the nonprofits that we've worked with, specifically over our budgeting solutions. Here at Armanino, we implement several different budget solutions that integrate with various different ERPs and at all price points. So I am going to tell you a couple of stories about 2 of them. So the first one we're digging in today is called the Corsage Foundation. So they had a lot of issues where data entry is taking multiple days. It's going into multiple systems. All of those systems were siloed. They weren't talking to each other. And it created a lot of reconciliation issues across the foundation to be able to know which is right. Everybody's got a little bit of a different slice of information, maybe taken from different sources. How do we know which one is true? Which one are we reconciling to, in other words? And so oftentimes that falls to the financial and accounting team. And so thinking about that process and how manual and spreadsheet heavy it was, looking at doing some automation there. And so now they're able to really do their quarterly and annual planning much quicker. It doesn't involve any spreadsheets. There's a single source of truth. They're able to integrate real-time financial data to know more about how their budget to actuals are doing once they've got that budget in place. And so really thinking about that automation of those manual processes to free up people from doing data entry and to enable them to grow their career and to dig in and do more value by doing more analysis. versus data entry. So really excited about how they've been able to really reimagine what their planning process looks like. And our second one that we wanted to talk about is Room to Read. This one is near and dear to my heart, as I worked at Room to Read prior to coming to Armanino. And our big challenge was Excel-based budgeting. We operated in, at the time I was there, over 25 different countries. We also had a bunch of different programs. So all of our budgeting was matrixed by program and by location. And so the program directors give you one number, location directors give you another number. It's supposed to be the same number, and they never agree on which number is the correct number or how you get to it. And so moving into a budgeting and planning system really allowed them, especially in a matrix budgeting environment like that, to make sure that people were coming to an agreement. You can overwrite each other's number, but at the end of the day, accounting only gets one. It really allowed them to streamline their international budgeting process, to look at how many people need to be involved, how can we give top-down direction with bottom-up input, setting those guidelines around how much to put towards certain programs, initiatives, or new things that are coming up, and how to respond quickly to a lot of those what-if scenarios for rapid rebudgeting, and the changing of the forecast needed when COVID really just kind of shut down a lot of the building and projects for their organization. So really exciting, the changes that they've been able to realize as well. Next. All right, turning it over to Brianna.
Thank you, Brenda. So when it comes to budgeting and planning, we often run into the same issues over and over. And Brenda gave some great examples of those just now. If you're currently working in an Excel or even a simple planning tool, you may find that there are difficulties when it comes to managing the data. You know, do you have the latest and greatest data available? Do you have the ability to see the data at the granularity that you need to see it? Are you using manual spreadsheets? So, you know, we often see multiple versions of the truth floating around. And then how much intervention do those spreadsheets need? So for example, you know, if you are having, you know, bunch of budget owners with their separate spreadsheets and there's a last minute change, are you taking a long time to make those changes within those budgets? And then how long does the overall process take for a budget or even a reforecast? And then thinking about those processes, where are you getting the inputs from? Who are your budget owners? Where's that data living? And is everybody using that same source of data? And another thing we find is the distribution of that data. So are you taking it and getting the same information out to the correct people? Are they getting different data from different sources? Who is kind of owning that distribution? And then also the analysis. Are you able to review and get feedback from the budgets? Are you able to understand where the variances are at? So these are all questions that we have to ask ourselves and align with a lot of those issues that we see. And, you know, there are ways to eliminate those pain points by using cloud-based solutions. What those solutions offer are real-time integrations with your ERP, as well as several other types of programs as well, CRMs, those types of things. And it allows you a dynamic and complex forecasting model, web-based data entry and analysis, and a single source of the truth, which ultimately we know is what we need. And all of these can be solved using a CPM tool. Can you go to the next slide, please? So what is a CPM tool? So CPM stands for Corporate Performance Management. And what it is a software that includes forecasting, budgeting, and planning functions, as well as reporting, dashboards, and the ability to do visualization analysis. Typically in these types of solutions, you're able to have your finance team own it. with the executive team and budget owners having the ability to be contributors or even just taking that data and being able to use it for analysis. Essentially, your teams are going to be able to manage their own pieces of the planning process within the tool, as opposed to being dependent on one source. One of the strengths of a CPM tool is the ability to do the quick what if analysis and scenario planning. Brenda really did a great job talking about the importance of that. So the ability to do those types of variance analysis and understand the impact of the changes version over version can really strengthen an organization. And since most of these CPM tools are cloud-based, you'll be able to have easy access to that single source of truth with real-time results from anywhere that you're able to log in and take a look at it. Currently, our firm is doing implementations for multiple CPM solutions. We work with a lot of nonprofits and found these solutions that are very successful. And we're here to assist with helping make informed decisions on the CPM tool and help you figure out which one is right for you. And some of those things that we consider during an evaluation are, what are your current budget processes, forecasting processes? What's your future state goals and strategy? What are your needs when it comes to reporting and visualizations? And what are the data sources and contributors that go into compiling all of that information and helping you get to an easy place to bring it all together? And we want to help set your team up for success. So with that said, I'll pass it over to Gabby to talk more about Armanino's strategic finance outsourcing and how we can support your finance functions.
Yeah, thanks so much, Brianna. So finance is very forward-looking. Investing in fp&A allows your organization to have a long-term plan, which is then going to trickle down to help you shape your day-to-day operations. So your long-term planning is critical because it ensures that your staff and your volunteers are all working kind of cohesively towards your vision, and that every action you take aligns with your strategy. So financial analysis helps support your strategic thinking by allowing you to examine big decisions around, program expansion, fundraising, and other major considerations for your nonprofit. And that's kind of what we handle at SFO. So as an example of this, I worked with a nonprofit to build out an operational model for them because they were interested in expanding one of their programs. And so the program was currently supported by a private pay option by the attendees. Ultimately, the nonprofit wanted to be able to expand this program without increasing the financial burden on their clients. So that goal ultimately meant truly understanding the cost of expansion, but also understanding what that fundraising gap might look like so that they could pursue funding for their program. And with enough success, the goal for them is to get to a fee-free model for this program, so no one has to pay to attend. So the operational model we built for them allows them to plan for those different scenarios and would even help with getting them in front of major donors to show how funds could be spent and why the donation is needed. So that's just an example of something we would help with within SFO to help a nonprofit organization strategically plan and perform some of that financial analysis that they may not have the ability to do in-house or may not have the time to do in-house, because we all know how it is when you have these kind of like long-term goals and you just don't have the manpower to get through them when you're trying to tackle your day-to-day operations. So, that's kind of a great example of why you might want to work with a team like strategic finance outsourcing. If you don't have the budget to hire a full-time finance staff, but you still want the ability to plan and strategize for the long term. The nice thing about the SFO team is, you can kind of ramp up, ramp down as needed. So maybe you just need a little bit of help with the budget process towards the end of your fiscal year, prepping for the next fiscal year. Definitely something that SFO helps with. And then, of course, Armanino as a whole has just some really knowledgeable people that you just have instant access to, tons of nonprofit experience, as you've seen on the webinar today. Lots of talented individuals that you just have instant access to without having to compete in the market, which can be a challenge for all employers really, but nonprofits in particular. So we just bring a lot of flexibility to your organization, which is always highly valued. So we have a few client success stories within SFO that we love to highlight and love to share. So the first one here is the Alzheimer's Care Program, which I actually just highlighted, building that driver-based operational model to do scenario planning for them. We have a religious organization that needed some break-even analysis done on a newly open event center that they had. Again, scenario analysis, trying to figure out how to price events, how to price rentals, how many rentals a year, what size, all those kinds of different questions that you might have. So, really enabled them to kind of build a strategic plan for the long term. And then we also have a nationally recognized boarding school that we work with, has some concerns about how inflation is impacting their endowment portfolio, concerning that they're going to draw down that endowment just trying to meet the demands. And so, working with them again to build scenario planning to try to model out how inflation might impact their endowment, rate of return, kind of operational expenses that are going to impact that endowment, and, kind of how to mitigate that by seeking additional funding. So really working with these clients to tackle some of their, big long-term problems that can seem really scary, and just kind of putting them into perspective and giving them the tools they need to really be able to plan and forecast and mitigate some of those. I think I will pass it back to Brenda on this one.
Sorry, couldn't get myself off mute fast enough. So thinking about how do you take all of this information and where do you go from here? Thinking about your reporting, dashboarding, and the analysis. Understanding what and why, what has been done in the past, why it was done that way. Sometimes we're just picking that up and it's way easier to just do it the way it's always been done rather than recreate a brand new process, because budget season is maybe my second least favorite season of all the seasons in nonprofit. And so thinking about, does it still make sense for the way the organization is functioning today? And then the second question is, of course, is there an easier way? And the answer is almost always going to be yes. And so thinking about what problem are you trying to solve for? Are you trying to get off of spreadsheets? Are you trying to stay on spreadsheets, but automate it a little bit because your team is really familiar with Excel and they will use it? Do you have a culture at your organization that embraces technology? And so thinking about what is going to make the most sense for your particular organization. And then thinking about how to chart a path for a better future. So what does the outlook for your business look like? How can you know more information sooner? If you're like most nonprofits, you've got multi-year grants that you're budgeting for every year because you're only doing an annual budget. Wouldn't it be nice to, when you get that grant, budget out the whole thing? Obviously, you've got to make adjustments because the grant budgets often change. But thinking about, can you put in that 10-year grant in there so that it's just in there and you're tweaking it rather than trying to find all of that documentation again year after year. Looking at how do you optimize your operating expenses, and of course, reduce them is what we're always looking to do. Is how can we deliver more program with less expense? And then the all ever important cash management. How do we control the cash flow in and out of the organization to make sure that we always have what is needed? And so looking at how you're going to scale that, this is kind of an example for what a roadmap would look like. Starts with setting your goals for the transformation, assessing your current process, defining the roles and responsibilities for a new environment, how many people need to be involved, at what level do they need to be involved. Kind of look at your future state. What would it look like if everything worked perfectly? We know that's not necessarily possible all the time, but thinking about your perfect future state, what are steps that we can take today to help set you on that path? Looking at revising and optimizing business processes. Oftentimes when you're looking at making a big change like this, it's going to stretch beyond, beyond just your team and your department. It's going to affect the entire organization. So what kind of buy-in do you need from your management team, your board, your other department heads, program directors, your budget owners? How can we standardize, the processes across all of the systems so that data is easier to integrate and to bring in and to match up? So if we're talking about data that we're getting, from a CRM or your donor management, we're getting that revenue data. Now, as accountants, we've got to release those restrictions. We've got to bring in that expense data, which may be coming from that new AP tool that you implemented during the pandemic or your expense management system. So expenses are coming in. How do you match those up? You've got to have a shared language to match those expenses up to revenue in order to release your funds from restriction. And so it really affects everybody when you're looking at, a transformation here and thinking about how can we invest in technology, because we can't A, afford more headcount, or B, find it. It's a tight talent market. And so really thinking about how can we do more with less. That's the nonprofit adage, is how to be able to do more with less. And so wherever you are in this process, if you haven't even started on this and you need some visioning help, we can help that. Or if you're just, exactly what tool you need and you need us to help position it to your board, we can do that as well. And so really thinking about meeting you where you are and helping you achieve your vision for your organization over time.
That was great. Thank you,
what we
Brenda, Brianna, and Gabby. The information was awesome. I really appreciate your guys' input and expertise. These slides and recording will be sent out. So if you need to contact us, here's the information, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you all.